This video is sponsored by Manscaped. So we've been doing our tour around the NHL, talking about different trade rumors, different players, different scenarios, and other, let's just say, trade discussions that we can be having here as fans, as consumers of the product, and as people trying to give speculation as to what could happen. So, today's video topic is going over the New York Islanders because in a recent piece written on The Athletic, what Anders Lee's injury means for the Islanders at the trade deadline, targets, cap space, and more, written by Arthur Staple, what we have is a list of different players that the Islanders might be interested in going after and would make for some interesting discussion. Now, The Athletic is paid for material, you know the drill. We're going to go over onto Spectors Hockey from yesterday because their article published is free, and it indeed goes over the ideas mentioned in this Athletic piece. Of course, from the thumbnail, from the title, you can already name two of the guys that we're talking about here today, but in Spectors Hockey, it's written here that Arthur Staple believes the Islanders could seek a top six forward, such as Buffalo's Taylor Hall or New Jersey's Kyle Palmieri, if Captain Anders Lee remains sidelined indefinitely with a lower body injury. Placing Lee, who has a $7 million AAV, on the LTIR would provide some salary cap relief to make a significant addition if they wish. More affordable rental options could include Mikhail Grenlin, Columbus's Nick Foligno, or Vancouver's Tanner Pearson. The Spectors note little part of this article talks about how we don't know how long Anders Lee is going to be out or how much to the extent of a rental player would Lou Lamoriello actually go after, but it is an idea to discuss. And this is one that honestly gets me kind of scared, because Anders Lee is a guy who is literally the captain of the Islanders. He's a 40-goal guy at best. He is a very capable NHL player. He's out, and he has been out of the lineup for a while. He was placed on LTIR yesterday, but regardless, the Islanders are still on a 9-game win streak, and they have been doing very well as the first team in the East. Right now, they have a 4-point lead over the second-place Washington Capitals. They do have 2 more games played, but that equates to 2 extra wins if you multiply things out. So they are undisputably the best team in the Eastern Division right now. They're doing this without Anders Lee, and they're still 9-0-1 in their last 10. So, if you're in a position where the Islanders have to stay without Lee's services for an extended amount of time, let's say the trade deadline comes around and Lee is still out, it's scary because this could legitimately be somewhat of a similar Patrick Kane, Tampa Bay Lightning, Nikita Kucherov kind of thing, because we made a video already talking about this kind of stuff before, how the cap doesn't exist in the playoffs because the amount of money you pay out to players on the salary cap, it's accounted for in the regular season. By the time the NHL season is done, in theory, every player for every team has had their contract paid out in full for that year, meaning that the playoffs are just kind of extracurricular. This is because not every team makes the playoffs, therefore it would be irrational to base the amount of time you're paying a player while including the amount of time the playoffs takes, because if your team is not in the playoffs, it doesn't really make sense to not have your full contract paid out, and you guys are sitting out for the next few months waiting for the next season to begin. And I'm not going to say that it's going to go down like this, but the possibility can arise where you have the similar Patrick Kane, Nikita Kucherov thing where this team, the Islanders, let's say they make a big move, they make a splash at the deadline. Right now, take a look at the cap-friendly page of the Islanders. They have a pretty decent amount of cap space. I mean, $0 in space. That's not terrible. Right now, if you take a look at the LTIR, they did indeed add Anders Lee, so there's some relief there. $7 million extra that they're going to be allowed to spend over the cap. But let's say you add another $7 million player, Taylor Hall, salary retained, whatever. When you go into the playoffs, if Anders Lee comes back, that's a $7 million player, your captain, added onto your squad for free. That's only under very specific circumstances, and that's only one hypothetical that I'm bringing up. Obviously, the possibility does exist wherein the Islanders just straight up don't do that, but Taylor Hall, the first name mentioned over here, would be a really interesting addition if Lou Lamoriello and co. wanted to go after that. Because, I mean, look, you don't need me to tell you how good Taylor Hall can be. This year he hasn't really been all too great, but imagine Taylor Hall playing with a Matthew Barzal. Ooh, boy, that sounds pretty good. Add him on with a Josh Bailey or whatever. Have Anthony Beauvillier looking pretty good in in that setup, oh man, things just look so good if you add a Taylor Hall. It's just, of course, the price. What exactly would the Sabres want in return? Well, the Islanders, they do have a first-round pick this year. They do have a second. It is the Colorado Avalanche second-round pick acquired in the Devon Toews trade. They also have a third, fourth, fifth. They have all their picks for this year except for their second. They also have an additional second next year with Colorado as well. So maybe it's a pick like that. Maybe it's a young guy, a prospect in the system. You still have Simon Holmstrom doing his thing over there as a signed contract. Josh Hosang's in here, so is Robin Salo, Bodie Wild. Interesting names for sure. But Taylor Hall being the big name here would be really interesting because in the span of about a year, he would have gone from the Devils to the Sabres to the Islanders. What's next? The Rangers? That metro New York area is really being explored, isn't it? But before we discuss our next player, let's get a quick word from our sponsor for today. Support for this YouTube channel is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels and is trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. Join the movement for all your below-the-waist grooming needs. Now, we've collaborated on this because there's some big news in town. Manscaped has just officially launched in Canada. If you're located in the Great White North, you may be one of the first Canadians to experience these life-changing products. You ever have those times? Sometimes it's just a little too much down there, and you need to clean things up. Manscaped is the answer for you with their third-generation redesigned electric trimmer, the Lawnmower 3.0. Cutting-edge ceramic blades, a 90-minute battery, LED lights, and it's waterproof, along with a 7,000 RPM motor and a charging stand. The Manscaped team has created the greatest below-the-belt hair trimmer. So go ahead, trim that junk of yours. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code LEGOROCKS99 at manscaped.com. Again, that's 20% off and free shipping with code LEGOROCKS99. Do yourself a favor and check out Manscaped. And yes, that is true. We are officially sponsored now, boys. We had ourselves the Jerseys Made Easy thing, and that's been pretty cool. If you need bulk jersey orders, click the link in the description, jerseymadeeasy.com. They're a great company to work with. But the channel's been booming. We've got some opportunities over here, and I have to thank every single one of you who have actually watched, supported, liked, commented on anything on these videos. So, you know what? My heart goes out to all of you, and you know that very much so. If you check out the streams, you know how enjoyable it is being in my position over here talking with all of you every single day. But yeah, next player we're talking about, I wanted to talk about Tanner Pearson. Let's skip Palmieri for now and just go straight to the Vancouver Canucks guy, because obviously he is a cheaper rental option. That is true. He's making $3.75 million, but he is in somewhat of a down year. I mean, 10 points, 31 games. Last year he had 45 points in 70 games, so yeah, he's really taken a dip. But you know what? Tanner Pearson is in a position where, honestly, I think if you're going to go out there and try to just offer up maybe that Colorado second and a fifth, I think the Vancouver Canucks would have an incentive to say yes if they're not in a winning position at the trade deadline. Because Tanner Pearson, even though he has been, kind of snake-bitten, he hasn't really been getting any opportunities either. He's been okay defensively, and that's kind of what has been keeping him in the lineup in the position that he has been in because, shutdown line, empty net line, he is out there with Bo, defensive matchups and all that. He's been a pretty capable defensively minded winger. It's just this year he's been a little bit down there in the production side of things. Now we know Tanner Pearson at his best can actually come alive when the playoffs, for example, get up and underway, but still, last year he had 20 goals. This year he's at 5 in 31 games. If there was a year to go out there and start declining in production, this year certainly wasn't the year. So, yeah, Tanner Pearson, 28 years old, he's a winger. He could do some pretty good defensive things, no doubt about it, especially under a system like Barry Trotz has. It's just, with the way the Islanders are winning and with the way that you have goal scoring coming from the entire lineup, I don't know how much it would translate if a Tanner Pearson is added onto that squad, because if you're looking for offensive production, you guys got some other good, fantastic players. We know how good Oliver Wahlstrom has been. We've seen Kiefer Bellows score a few goals here and there lately. Brock Nelson, Barzal. If Anders Lee comes back, then Anders Lee. You still have Peugeot and Eberle too. So if you're looking for offense, I don't know if I would say Tanner Pearson's the guy you want, but you know what? If you really want a defensive guy who could play in your middle six, do some PK stuff, do some really capable board play, then hey, Tanner Pearson could be your guy, could be yours for about a second-round pick. Next up, though, Kyle Palmieri. This is an interesting one for sure because we have actually discussed Palmieri a few times on the channel before. He is indeed also set to expiring later this year, and this season, man, 30 years old, he's at 12 points, 24 games played. Last year, he was at 45 points in 65 games. I've always had a good soft spot for Kyle Palmieri, but with the way the Devils have gone down, there could be some uncertainty as to whether or not he's going to come back for sure. But you know what? If you want a Kyle Palmieri, a guy to actually mesh up in your middle six, give that second power play unit some oomph in it, then hey, maybe Kyle Palmieri's your guy. Same could be said about Mikhail Grenlin. He's been a pretty significant wild card the past few years because we know how good he was back when he was in his heyday with the Minnesota Wild. However, the most recent seasons have seen Mikhail Grenlin take a little bit of a turn for the worst. I mean, this year's at 10 points in 25 games played, so about roughly-ish a tad worse points per game than last year, but still, his days in Minnesota, man, almost 70 points, 67 points, 69 in 77 games and all that. Yeah, he was great before, but there is some reclaiming to do, I would say, with this kind of player. So who knows if you're going to go out there, trade for him, and maybe see if he can provide that spark for you towards the playoffs. But Mikael Granlund, Tanner Pearson, Kyle Palmieri, Taylor Hall, these be interesting suggestions for sure. The Islanders went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Who knows if they can do that with another player, maybe even with Anders Lee if he comes back for the playoffs. Some weird mumbo-jumbo, Nikita Kucherov, Patrick Kane, cap circumvention kind of stuff. But it is what it is. Anders Lee's on the LTIR. We wish him a speedy recovery. Talk to me in the comments what you thought about these ideas over here. Check out Manscaped. Check out Jerseys Made Easy. I hope you enjoyed this video. Trolls 99. And bye.